we're gonna start the webinar shortly. Just to introduce myself, I'm Maria Levchenko. I hope you can also see me talking to you. I am a community manager at Europe PMC, and I'm gonna talk about what Europe PMC is in a couple of minutes. It's a literature database at the European Bioinformatics Institute. And today we're gonna be talking about preprints. So let me just start with the slides and we can just continue from here. So today's webinar is dedicated to preprint discovery, and I'm going to be trying to cover both preprint authors and preprint readers, and trying to tell you about some of the common questions that arise about preprints. So I'm going to briefly talk about what we consider to be a preprint, and there are many different definitions that not everyone always agrees on. And because it's a webinar on discovery, we're going to talk about where you can find preprints, how do you incorporate them in your regular searches for scientific literature, how do you select relevant preprints, and also what to do if you have posted a preprint and you would like to take advantage of this. So let's start with the basics. What are preprints? So for those of you who don't know, the traditional way in which researchers share results is by publishing articles in journals. Now, journal articles undergo a peer review process. And in this process, a manuscript that an author has written and submitted to a journal is scrutinized by different experts in the field who provide comments and feedback on the original manuscript. And after rounds of this revision process, the manuscript finally appears as a journal publication. Whereas preprints are very similar in form. They are complete scientific manuscripts. However, the process for making them public and available is different. Preprints are uploaded by the authors to a public server called Preprint server. And preprints do not undergo this traditional peer review. They're not edited or typeset by a journal. They appear directly on the server and are open for anyone to pitch in and provide community feedback. Now, preprints are a rapid way to disseminate scientific findings, whereas journal articles provide this additional layer of validating findings by the way of peer review. And so in theory, this is more of a parallel process. Someone might post a preprint to a public server while submitting it as a manuscript, and it could be identical to the preprint to the journal, where it later on is going to change through peer review, editing, and typesetting. So these are the two forms of publishing, if you wish. Just to highlight what's different about a preprint from a traditional journal article, and this is taken from a website called ASAP Bio, the preprints allow for really rapid posting. With traditional journal articles, often it will be the case that it might take a month or even years from the moment where you send a manuscript to a journal to when it appears online. Whereas with preprints, there is a really lightweight screening. So there is a screening process. Not everything can become a preprint. It has to be a scientific manuscript. So the checks will ensure that it's scientific in nature and also screen for some ethical considerations. But in general, almost in a matter of days, a preprint is going to be online for anyone to view. Preprints are citable. Most often, they will be assigned an ID or a DOI, digital object identifier, which allows others to put them in grant proposals, cite them in articles just as you would a journal article, and so on. Preprints are typically open access. This means anyone in the world can access them without any fees. and they often allow you to just retain author's copyright. So it's up to you to assign a license, and other people can reuse it in the way that they like. For example, they can reuse it by translating a preprint, or they can reuse it by text mining it. Preprints also allow early feedback, meaning that you don't need to go through the peer review process first. You could post a preprint, see if community responds with some comments and suggestions, incorporate these to improve your manuscript early, and then when you submit an article, it will already have this prior check by the experts from your field that you've shared it with. And another important point about preprints is that they are versioned. Now, an article, most of the time, once it's published, it doesn't get many changes. There are ways to introduce some comments and corrections, but most of the times, articles are much more static. Now, the idea of a preprint is to make it as dynamic as possible. So if you get that valuable feedback that you wanted to incorporate, or if you get new data that you wanted to show that add to the same story, then you can create new versions of a preprint. And each version is stable and citable. So they remain part of the scientific record, but you sort of progress as you go, and you publish new and new findings in a preprint. Now, talking about versions, just to help you understand it a little bit better, you can think about it in this way. When you submit a manuscript, it will go through rounds of revision. And every time it goes through a revision, it becomes a different version of a manuscript, until finally what others will see is the peer-reviewed article that has the stamp of approval. Now, with preprints, you will get these different versions of record as they change and incorporate new findings or comments and suggestions from others. And this is sort of similar to possibly your exchange with a document that you are writing collaboratively with somebody else. This is an example of a PhD thesis, and different versions will be all these different comments and corrections, incorporations in the document. And so for the purposes of this webinar, because as I said, many people have different definitions of what a preprint is, what we're going to call preprints are either manuscripts posted on preprint servers or manuscripts that have been submitted to a journal, have possibly undergone some rounds of revision, but they're not yet this final article. So some journals will make these revisions open and publicly accessible, and we will also call them preprints, although they appear in a journal, not on a preprint server. So now coming to the second question. Now, I'm not gonna try in this webinar to convince you that preprints are good or bad for science. We're not gonna explore their benefits or downsides. This webinar is gonna be focusing on how to use preprints to your advantage if you decide so. So that's why we're going directly to the question of where to find preprints. And the trick is that often the places where you would look for articles and the places where you would look for preprints are actually separate. So you would need to do 2 searches on different websites to find either. And it would be really useful to combine them in one. There are many different tools that you can use, but the tool that I'm going to be talking about today is Europe PMC. Now, I work at Europe PMC, and this is a database of scientific literature. I've put the address here, and you can go to the Europe PMC website if you wish, and just try out some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to be suggesting as we go, because I find that sometimes following by doing whatever is happening in the webinar can help you familiarize yourself better with what's going to happen. And so Europe PMC contains different types of scientific literature. It has peer-reviewed publications that come to us from PubMed, Agricola, which is an agricultural literature database, and some other sources. It also has a subset of preprints, as well as scientific patents. all the literature in Europe PMC is related to life sciences, biomedical literature, and agricultural literature. So it's topic specific. And in terms of availability of full text, there are also different types of content. So nearly 35 million records only have abstracts and bibliographic information, things like journal, author name, and so on. 5 million of those have free full text available directly in Europe PMC. And on top of it, another 3 million are available as links to the free full text in other repositories or on journal pages. So altogether, almost 8 million of free full text for the 35 million abstracts. Now, the question that I asked before is, how do you incorporate preprints in your search? And the beauty of using Europe PMC is that you don't need to do anything special, because any of your searches, any of your keyword searches, just as you would do in Google Scholar or PubMed or any other tool, they will already contain results that are preprints. Whether you're searching for a single keyword, here I'm searching for mitophagy, and you can see peer-reviewed articles together with preprints in the results. Whether you're searching for a number of keywords, for example, brain cell plasticity in zebrafish, and all of these searches are available with the same perks like you would do for traditional journal articles. So you can use phrase search or any kind of Boolean keyword combination where you use and or not to define a more complicated search. All of this works just the same way for preprints as it would for traditional journal articles. So there's nothing special that you need to do. As long as you're using Europe PMC, your search covers preprints and journal articles alike. Now, you could see in the previous slide, perhaps I'll come back to it once again, that each preprint in results has this yellow label saying preprint. And that's how you know exactly what you're viewing right now. If you get to a preprint abstract, like here, you will also get this yellow banner at the very top of it that will say that this article is a preprint and it hasn't been peer reviewed. So if you're worried about getting only journal articles or only preprints, you can do so by using filters, but you will always know what the record is that you're currently on. You will always distinguish preprints from journal articles. Now, I mentioned filters, and this is how you could select preprints in your search results if you only wanted to focus on preprints specifically. If you're on Europe PMC website right now following this tutorial, then on your right-hand side, you will see a link to content type filters, which will have preprints. If you click on this link, you will select preprints, and you will see that your search query, which is what is written in the search box, you will see that it changes, and it now contains not only the keyword that I search for, which is mitophagy, but it also contains this SRC semicolon PPR. And this basically is a machine way, so the way that the search engine handles this filter. And if you copy and paste that and change the keywords in any way, it will work exactly the same as the filter. So now we already covered how you can search for preprints, but it would be useful to know what content is included. And here I must say that Europe PMC has quite a comprehensive list, but of course these are not all the preprints that are out there. The preprint servers that you can find in Europe PMC are bioRxiv, preprints.org, TearJ Preprints, ChemArchive, and if you remember, I mentioned that we also have these manuscript versions which are submitted to the journal but haven't gotten that final stamp of peer review. And those will appear in F1000 Research Journal and other open research publishing platforms run by F1000. So those will be manuscripts that will later be published as a journal article in F1000. Because anything that's published on other preprint servers might not appear as a journal publication later on, or they can pick any kind of journal to submit to. There is no link. Whereas F1000 research, if it's in F1000 as a preprint, it will appear in F1000 as an article. If you look at the list of the results, you can see that there is a link to the publisher, as we call it, of the preprint for each of the record. So it will tell you that the first one is from bioRxiv, whereas the second one is from preprints.org, and the third one is from chemarchive. And as I said, this is actually a link, so it works similar to a journal search. If you click on this link, it will filter your results by this publisher. So you will get all the preprints from bioRxiv. Now, this is a very sort of basic search, and here I wanted to share some more advanced tips and tricks on how to select preprints that might be relevant to your field. So what is it that you're looking in a preprint for that would be helpful to pick those that you would want to focus on? Perhaps you would want to see the entire study so that the full text of the preprint is available. Perhaps you want to see most recent preprints so that you want to sort them by date. You might want to focus on preprints that have been cited, because like journal articles, preprints are cited, and that could help you find those that are particularly popular in the field. You might want to see preprints for which community reviews are available so that they are recommended or refereed by someone. And you might want to see preprints from a specific author or a group. So we will go by each of these in order. Well, if you want to see the entire study, you should remember that all preprints are actually available as open access publications. If you look at Europe PMC, there will be filters for free full text and open access in the content type filter box. However, these only concern peer-reviewed journal articles for which full text is available in Europe PMC. So if you select this filter, you will actually not see any preprints in your search. And you don't need to use the filters because, as I said, all preprints will have a free full text link to the preprint server available on the abstract page. So there is no need to use any kind of filters. Every preprint is available for you to read. The entire study, the supplemental materials, it will all be there. And you can see this link on the abstract. So this is how a preprint record will look in Europe PMC. You can see that full text link has this green icon that indicates it's open access and available to read. Now, what if you want to find most recent preprints? There are two major ways to do that. One is by using date filters. Those are yearly filters, and you can just select whatever year you want to filter by to see preprints from 2018 or from 2017 or beyond, or set any kind of date range. However, that, as I said, will limit them to a specific year. Whereas what you can also do is use the sorting order. Now, the date filter will limit the number of results. So you will have less results because you will only find the one from that particular year. The sorting order, of course, will keep the same number of results, just it will display the most recent ones on the top. So you can use that to find most recent preprints in combination with the preprint filter. You can see here that there are three sorting orders. There's relevance, date, and time cited. And so if you wanted to see preprints that have been cited, you would use time cited order. And you can see that for preprints, there is a number of them that have been cited quite well, starting with the first one, which is cited 41 times. And you can see that this 41 times is actually a link. If you click on it, it will give you the results for the articles or other preprints that are citing that particular study. So you can always use this as a sort of way to expand your reading list and see which articles have cited that particular preprint. Now, another important point is looking for preprints that have reviews. And we already discussed this. Preprints are not peer-reviewed in a traditional sense. There is no solicited peer review. Nobody requests a review from reviewers. There is no requirement to have a review or any kind of feedback to post a preprint. However, there is a lot of community discussion going around preprints, and you can find those that have recommendations or reviews that highlight all the things that might be changed by authors to improve the manuscript. And so in Europe PMC, there are actually many platforms that give you an opportunity to do so. There are many different ways to peer review a preprint, from leaving a comment on preprint server to using a particular service. In Europe PMC, we provide links to 2 services that provide peer reviews for preprints. Those are Publons and Peer Community In. Publons is a website that provides place for traditional peer reviews for journal articles. But in addition to that, there might be post-publication peer reviews for both journal articles and peer reviews for preprints. So there's sort of 3 types of content in Publons. Whereas Peer Community In makes not only reviews, but also recommendations. So it's sort of a thumbs up function, if you wish. It's not critical reviews as much as it is this article I think should be recommended to read because it contains some interesting data. So Peer Community In provides reviews and recommendations for preprints, as well as post-publication peer reviews for journal articles. So both services are not limited to preprints, but both services will have something for preprint content. In order to find preprints that have this kind of feedback, you would need to go to the advanced search in Europe PMC. Advanced search link is located right next to the search button. And when you get there, there's going to be a long form in which you need to get to external links at the very bottom of selections for the advanced search. And so you can choose an external links provider from the menu. And when you do so, here is the 2 preprint feedback providers that we talked about. This is Peer Community In and Publons. And you can see that the syntax in the search bar for the search, so basically what the machine searches for, changes to labs, pubs, and the number. This basically translates Peer Community In to that particular text. And so when you get there, you can see that there is actually about 3,000 preprints that have a peer review, and there's about 400,000 total results. So if you're interested in preprints that have that kind of link, then filter, don't forget to filter by preprints. And when you get to the preprint abstract, if you wanted to read the peer review, then you would need to go to a tab that is called external links. I'll highlight it here. When you click on that tab in the abstract view, it will open this list of external links, and there will be the link to the peer review of the preprint. And if you follow that link, you will get to the provider. So in this case, it's a review, or rather a recommendation from Peer Community In, and you can read what the reviewer said. Finally, we get to searching for preprints from a specific author. Now, again, searches in Europe PMC work the same way for preprints as they do for journal articles. As you would search anywhere, you will type the family name and perhaps an initial of the author you're looking for. And just as an example here, I'm searching for Suresh Nithrajan from University of Guelph. And what is sort of unique to Europe PMC is that we bring up suggested authors. And you can see this in this gray box above the results. And this is a really useful tool because it allows you to filter results by an ORCID ID. Now, if you click on that link, you will see that the search changes and the box changes. Now, these results are specifically for the author that we were looking for, and it also has less publications, 37 compared to the previous result of 69. Now, what is an ORCID ID? I'm gonna just briefly highlight what it is and why it is important. You probably know that it's really difficult to search for authors that have similar names because the results will not distinguish whether this is a researcher from University of Amsterdam that works on HIV versus a researcher from University of Göttingen working on fossils. So an ID allows to assign a unique string of numbers to each researcher and thereby differentiate one Smith J from another Smith J. And in Europe PMC, we're integrated with one type of researcher IDs that are issued by ORCID organization. These are free to anyone to sign up and use. And so if a researcher has an ORCID ID and has added their publication to this ORCID ID, they will have this kind of suggested author box in Europe PMC. They will appear there, and we will pull out the number of publications and number of citations based on their ORCID profile. And this is really useful when you're trying to distinguish two authors with a similar name. It gives you the affiliation, it gives you the number of citations, and you can go directly to their profile. So here you will see that there is a link to view profile, and that will bring you to this page. So it will show you a graph, which is possibly more useful to the author to share in any kind of CV or on a personal website, but more importantly, it will also have a publications list. And you can see here that researchers do claim preprints to their ORCID. So this is a research output alongside journal article that somebody can say is a work of mine. And so those preprints will then appear as part of this record. They will be shown, they will be counted towards the number of publications and of course as part of the open citations count. So with this, actually, it brings us to the last part of the talk, and this is talking about preprints from a point of view of an author. So how can you take the most advantage of posting a preprint? When thinking about posting preprints, you might want to know where preprints are later on published if you're thinking about submitting a manuscript that has been posted as a preprint to a different journal. You might want to add a preprint to your publication list using ORCID, as I just showed, or you might want to cite a preprint in the final publication that you have published. So regarding the first question, how do you find where preprints are published? Well, in Europe PMC, it's possible to search for preprints that have a published version. And to do so, you type has published version, yes. You can see it in the search bar above. And this will bring you, you can combine that, of course, with a keyword search, and that will bring you preprints that have a published version. And this will be duplicated in the preprint abstract page. So here you can see that there is a disclaimer that says that a later version of this preprint was published in BMC Genomics, and you will have a link to the publication. So you can always see how a preprint sort of progressed, whether it was the same manuscript, what the authors have changed, whether the data remains the same, and so on and so forth. So if you're just starting in the preprint posting, maybe this is a good place to look for some ideas and inspiration. It's of course also possible to do this other way around. You can look which journal articles have had a preprint, and for that you need a query that says has preprint. Yes, you can see it in the search bar here. And so this will find journal articles. If you look at content type, the preprint filters disappears because of course these are specifically peer-reviewed journal articles that have a preprint version, and the link will appear in a similar disclaimer on the abstract site. So I just wanted to highlight another resource that can be really useful, especially if you're looking into policies around preprints, and that's the Preprint Info Center from ASAP Bio. I have a link here on the slide. They have great information on journal policies and practices around preprints, as well as funder policies and university policies regarding promotion and tenure. And so you can just supplement your search with all this information if you're not sure whether posting a preprint will have any kind of effect on publishing a journal article later. So now coming to adding a preprint to your publication list. I showed you an author profile before, and if you wanted to have one, it's really easy to get as long as you have an ORCID ID and you claim your publications to it. You can do the same for a preprint as well. So the way you would do it is go to Europe PMC and at the search bar, above the search bar, find link to tools and ORCID article claiming. Now, if you go there, then you will be brought to this page where you just have to click Start, authorize the tool by logging into your ORCID ID, and it will basically search for your name as an author. And you can see here in the top right corner that now I'm logged in as Maria Levchenko. And the tool will basically search for all publications that have my name as an author and allow me to select any that I would like to link to my profile. Again, just highlighting that these are the ORCID tool things. You have to double check that you're logged in with your ORCID, and you can edit the query if, for example, the search brings up a lot of irrelevant results because you have a common name like me and you share it with a number of different researchers. And so once you've done that, the article, or a preprint in this case, will appear both in your ORCID profile, and here is mine, it will appear under Works, and it will also appear in your author profile. Finally, a question of citing preprints often comes up, and can you cite preprints in your publications? Absolutely, and many people do. And here is how you can get a citation easily. So in Europe PMC, when you're on an abstract page of a preprint that you would like to cite, you just need to look at the citations information if you want to see how it appears in other publications. So under the citation tab, you will see this list of articles, each of which have cited this preprint. So you can go to that article and just check reference section to see how the authors chose to cite a preprint. And of course, the other way is by using the export function. So if you click on the export, it will bring you to this form where you can select export as text citation, and it will give you this TXT file that you can just copy and paste as a citation. Just as a highlight of how that's going to change, because we are now rolling out a new version of Europe PMC, and you can try it out under Europe PMC beta, that's at the top of the site. So this will be changed to a tool that's called Get Citation, and that will basically allow you to directly copy and paste the citation for a particular preprint without having to go to download the citation as a file. So you can just quick save it and use it in any kind of publication citation that you'd like. And so with this, we finished the bulk of this webinar. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I hope that you got inspired to post, cite, review, and read preprints, and I'd encourage you to do so. But most importantly, I hope that if you are interested in preprints, this webinar was able to show you how you can get the most out of the preprint experience. And I'll just highlight some of the upcoming webinars. If you're still with us, please fill out a feedback form when you go, and now we can start with any questions that you may have. So there is one question right now. What happens to a preprint record in Europe PMC as it is updated or becomes published in a scientific journal? So question one, what happens to a preprint record as it is updated? If there's a new version of a preprint that has been published, then that version will be indexed by Europe PMC, meaning we will add it to our search results, and it will appear automatically as another record. So you will have multiple versions in the search whenever the new one becomes available. If a preprint is published in a scientific journal, then that depends whether the publisher provided this kind of link between a preprint and the journal article. So often the preprint servers do that. For example, bioRxiv, they monitor if that happened, and then they tell us about this connection. So once we know that a journal article and a preprint have been linked, we will display this blue banner that I showed you before that says this preprint is published as this article. If we don't know about that connection, then that will not, unfortunately, be available. So Andrea is asking, what are the thoughts on citing a preprint in its final published version? So if the article in a given journal, that would basically be a self-citation of the almost same article. Again, I don't have a set opinion on whether that's a good or a bad thing. I just know that many people do. And in a way, you acknowledge a previous work. Depending on how the preprint has progressed, you could argue that peer review that the manuscript went through already changes the article in a way. But of course, it's always up to the author whether they cite a preprint or not. In the end, what really matters is how you use these citations. It doesn't hurt to have a citation for establishing a link between preprint and a final published version. Whether that citation should be used for promotions, that's really up to promotion committees to decide. There is a question of how the pharmaceutical industry is using preprints. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of that. If anyone has an idea, please reply to David in the group chat. There is also a question, how can one search for non-preprint sources only? So there is a way. Imagine using the preprint filter, as I showed you before. So let's say you search for a keyword, say cancer, and then you select preprints as a source, and the search will change to cancer and source PPR. Because the search works with Boolean operators, so this and can be changed to not, meaning that you now have excluded preprints from your search. You can also do that via advanced search. And so when you go to advanced search, you can select the sources that you're interested in. So you could, for example, say that you only want to see articles from that appear in PubMed, or that appear in Agricola, or PubMed and Agricola. And so you can do any kind of more advanced combination using the advanced search. But the simplest way would be to just say not source PPR. Do we have, okay. Do journals forbid preprints before publishing? So many journals do not, and some even encourage submissions. For example, there is a program, and I know PLOS journals participate in it, which is Journal to bioRxiv, where once you're submitting your manuscript to PLOS, they will ask you if you'd also like to submit a preprint to bioRxiv. And so for each publisher, you should simply check before posting a preprint whether they'll be happy with it or not. And I've posted a link before. You can check that on ESA Bio website, or you can also use Sherpa Romeo for any publisher policies. And Andrea has posted a really useful link in the chat of Wikipedia list of articles. So if you want to check any specific journal, then you should just check the list and see if they appear on the policy. Many will be fine with a preprint, but again, the responsibility lies with an author. If there are no more questions, then we will be finishing shortly. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to ping me later on. My email is on the first slide, and I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you may have. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed, and see you soon in a different webinar.